Damos la bienvenida al lanzamiento regional para América Latina y el Caribe del informe de la FAO, la situación de los jóvenes en los sistemas agroalimentarios. Es un honor compartir este espacio con ustedes. Mi nombre es Pamela Rosero, soy oficial de Asuntos Públicos en la Oficina Regional para América Latina y el Caribe y tengo el agrado de acompañarles una vez más como moderadora de este espacio. El objetivo de este encuentro es presentar los hallazgos y recomendaciones del informe, destacando su relevancia para la región e impulsar un diálogo entre responsables de políticas, jóvenes, academias, sector privado y socios del
academy and partners of this development to strengthen the participation of young people in agri-food systems. We would like to thank everyone that is with us in person and those that are connecting through our live connection. Please assure yourselves that we will have simultaneous interpretation available to all of you. So we'd like to invite you to participate and share your reflections during all these presentations. To begin, I would like to welcome Maya Takagi, who is the leader of the Latin American and the Caribbean office, who will give us some opening remarks. Please, the floor is yours, Madame. Thank you, Pamela. Good morning to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, those of you that are in the room, those that are connected. It is an honor for me to be here and to welcome all of you at the regional level on the situation of youth in agri-food systems. In the young people, we will be talking about the regional aspects, the implications for our region, and for the countries of these region. I would like to welcome the authorities of the government that are here, Sebastián Acosta, head of the division of the promotion of the Agri-Food Systems Department in Chile, the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Agriculture from Dominican Republic, Colin Phillips, who is in the roadmap of St. Vincent and the Grenadines for the United Nations, and the Ministry of Agriculture, Fishing, Forestry, Inclusion, and Work. To youth that represent of the World Forum for the Alliance for Food Sovereignty of the peoples of Latin America and the Caribbean, and those that are part of the Caribbean for agri-food systems. We in the present topics that we will be hearing for our colleagues of days, or the representatives of FAO, the regional officers, all the people that are here and also that are connected today, our colleagues from FAO who have contributed to this publication and to this event, of course. Your participation and your commitment is here with the participation of youth in the transformation of agri-food systems. In accordance to the findings that we are presenting today in Latin America and the Caribbean, youth presented 1 of every 6 people represent the amount. We know that 75% live in rural peri-urban areas and approximately 39% are employed in the agri-food systems, whether directly through agriculture or activities related to the food chain within the agricultural process. As it is known in the strategic framework of FAO, this population constitutes a key force in agri-food systems for agri-efficiency, resilient and sustainable. We know that youth development and investment supports the resilience of rural communities. This is why
las juventudes y nuestros aliados para la construcción
that in the World Forum for Youth, the young are not only the future, they are the present. We have to change our narrative. They're not the future. They're here with us today. They are today. they already provide the difference for our auditors, our countries, and our communities. So when they have the tools and the space to act, not only do they participate, they free the space. So we're very thankful. We're very delighted to have you here at a regional event. And we hope that it will be very key to all of us, for us, for youth, for all the communities, and all the technical involvement, and everyone in the community in policies and actions that will involve the protagonism of rural young people. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Maya, for your reflections and your opening remarks. We will now continue with the technical report of youth in agri-food system in the hands of Benjamin Davis, the director of the Division for Rural Inclusiveness, Gender Equality for FAO. Good morning to everyone. Thank you very much. I cannot stop smiling because when I see the teleprompter, I always smile because in a plenary in FAO, the teleprompter is behind you and how it reflects the different styles of our own leaders. So Maximo Torero, our head economist, when he speaks very fast. So the teleprompter rushes, then the DG, he's very spontaneous. So he begins, da, 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 and then he takes out, is free speaking, he stops. Sometimes he has to go rushing where he re-begins and then he rushes again and so on. I'm always smiling when I see the teleprompter, reminding myself of the different styles of presenters. Thank you very much for being here. I would like to present the report of youth in agro-food system with a focus on Latin America and the Caribbean. The report offers a very broad vision of the situation of women and young men in the agri-food systems and also analyzes the demographic data and the spaces for opportunities for peri-urban and rural areas, and evaluates how they participate and how they are involved in agri-food system. Three main aspects: decent development, food, nutrition, and resilience. It reflects how and under what conditions youth can catalyze the transformation of the agri-food systems. It is a very long report. I'm just going to give you a sample, a short sample of the results. You can see it here. It is a very broad report. There is a translation that is online in Spanish, and there's also information that is underway, which has been a struggle, the translation. But it is work for empirical analysis of public policies that is very robust. There we go. So youth is at the center of the major changes in the world. There's 1.3 billion youth between 15 and 24 years of age. This is a definition of United Nations. It is the largest cohort of youth that we have ever seen in history, and it creates major challenges, particularly now in a very disruptive global arena. Almost 85% of the young population lives in low and middle income countries, but in countries such as these, their energy and their potential for innovation is crucial in the economic local development and in the weaving of local communities in rural areas. We have the population of rural between the ages of 10 to 24 years old. And in the horizontal, we have the index of systems of agri-food systems, which comes from SOFA, which has been used in the last years. SOFA is the basis of a typology of transition for Agri-Food Systems, which groups people in different categories: extensive crisis, traditional crisis, expansion, diversification, formalization, and finally industrialization. This is a typology that categorizes the agri-food systems, not only the transformation. It explains the transformation, where we want to go with these transformations. And in addition, through this typology, we analyze the data in this report. I thought it was important to describe it because it is a very common typology that takes place in the most reports that are carried out by FAO. So as you can observe, from the nations with an agri-food system that is more traditional, it has large youth population in growth, and countries with agri-food systems that are more formalized, there are proportions of lower amount of young people in rural area. Latin America and the Caribbean, you can see them, and they are in the categories that are intermediate, expansion, diversification, and formalization. And the implications of policies to include young people in agri-food system are quite different from one context to the next. And we try in this report to represent those various contexts. Each country is reflected and observed based on its demographic reality. Now, as Maya mentioned, 46% of the youth population lives in rural areas, and 65% in Latin America and the Caribbean, which is in peri-urban areas too. But the opportunities are not the same for youth, depending on where they live. So this study characterized rural areas where youth lives with the potential, agricultural potential and connectivity. The majority of youth, rural youth, live in zones with agricultural potential, more than 50%, and access to connectivity, which is connectivity. This is connectivity, and this is agriculture. 6% of youth lives in areas with low opportunities, none of the two. But at a world scale, the opportunities are very unequal. So countries with prolonged crisis, only 2% of these youth have these opportunities, which is this box here, in comparison with 50% in the most industrialized nations. So at the world level, it is 18%. And in Latin America and the Caribbean, which is what you can observe here, the higher proportion of youth live in areas of high opportunities, 31%, which is here, and only 2% live in areas of low opportunities. And a higher percentage live in areas with a higher amount of agriculture and also connectivity, which is about 61%. Now, if we observe the world level, we cross this with the regions and climate change, which is in the projection. At the world level, 395 million youth, rural youth, live in an area that will experiment a reduction of agricultural production given climate change. In Latin America, in Latin America, 32 million young, which is 67% of the total population of rural young, will feel this reduction, which represents 8% of all the rural youth in the world. Now, this drop in productivity could increase the migratory pressure. In 2020, youth represented 15% of the international migrants in Latin America and the Caribbean. Now, in the report, there is a very detailed analysis of international migration and internal migration. I will not mention this because it does not include Latin America and the Caribbean because there's a lack of data. It's most about Asia, Oceania, and Africa. Okay. Now, rural youth are faced with major challenges to access assets. There is more empirical data on education, internet, financial access, less information about um, uh, livestock, land, and there has to be more studies on this and analysis. For example, observing households that are held or led by youth, which is not a very fruitful analysis. So you have to use a great deal of case studies. But in that which relates to urban adults and youth, the rural youth have less access to assets and to have livelihoods independently. And this is what you expect youth to have less assets because of the accumulation process. Now, access to land is far away from their access, given the delays of inheritance, high costs, and the lack of capital. Youth from both genders have different access to agrarian support, which is generally not the head of household. Generally, it's a man of more extended age. Youth also has a less access to banking services, mostly in rural area and in countries of middle to low income. Latin America and the Caribbean, only 45% of youth have a bank account versus 53% of adults. And also digital access varies according to the agri-food system. Almost 98% of youth use internet and the most industrialized area, but only 33% in agri-food systems that are traditional. In Latin America and the Caribbean, the data is 91% of youth uses internet compared to 78% of the adults. Now, notwithstanding the improvements of education worldwide in the last decennia, rural youth has less access to education compared to those that live in urban centers. At the world level, 74% of rural youth complete their high school education compared to 85% of urban youth. In Latin America and the Caribbean, rural youth, particularly women, also have less rates of high school termination or finalization. You can see the expansion, diversification, and formalization in Latin America, and you can see that the majority of them, in yellow, women, youth, rural women that have a lower rates of education. Now, the gender gaps are in general reduced as the agri-food systems transition towards industrialization. Agri-food systems are key for employment. At the world level, 44% of workers are employed in the agri-food systems compared to 38% of the adults. The green box here illustrates the work in agriculture, and blue is beyond the agrarian exploitation, but within agri-food systems. They are 10% difference between 2005, mostly because of lack of employment in agriculture. Now, agri-food systems reduces with the transition to agri-food systems, and employment transfers from agriculture to, which are activities beyond the plantations or farms. 39% of youth are employed in agri-food systems, vis-a-vis 68% in sub-Saharan Africa and 52% in Meridional Asia. Now, employment, youth employment in agri-food systems varies between 36% in Latin America and 42% in Central America. As you can see in the graph, with the exception of the Caribbean, there's a higher participation of youth in agri-food systems than those above 25 years of age. Those are the youth, the younger and the elder. The employment then in agri-food systems beyond agri-food system, you can see that the agri-food system, therefore, is the employment that goes beyond the farm, and that is the most common in the region. Now, at the world level and in Latin America and the Caribbean, the agri-food system are the entrance door and which are key to youth, particularly those that are younger, 15 to 19 years of age, which is the first level on this graph. In Latin America and the Caribbean, young women and those and adults depend mostly on jobs outside of the farm in agri-food system than young men. And you can see this in blue, represented here in blue. Blue is larger than green. Therefore, it is more important for women to work outside of the farm. As age progresses, men and women leave at the same rhythm into the agri-food systems. It is not shown in the graph, but as you add the entrance point goes from agriculture to the employment that is not agriculturally linked within the agri-food system. Think about the United States, the fast food industry, which is the entrance door. Work by youth in agri-food systems is precarious, mostly. At the world level, 91% of young women and 83% of young men that work in the agricultural sector have vulnerable employment, and these are independent or family-based workers. On the other hand, only a third of women and young men that work in agri-food system beyond the agricultural exploitation have vulnerable employment. A lower percentage than those of higher age, 2/3 are employees. So you can see employees here, and here you can see that the precarity is more common amongst those that are older than those that are younger. Now, in Latin America, in agriculture, 51% of men and 75% of young women have vulnerable employment in agriculture, and the percentage of precarity are much higher in South America and the Caribbean for women and men, young people that are male and female and male. The employment precarity in agriculture is more common between 35 years of age. You can see the darker blue illustrated, and the precarity of employment in agriculture is more common amongst those that are above the age of 35, with the exception of young women in the Caribbean.
No, eso es anterior. Ahí. La precariedad laboral en las actividades fuera de la
precariousness in activities beyond are lower for those that are in each subregion. Those are outside of the farm and those are within the farm.
Ahora, las mujeres jóvenes son
now, young women are have less propensity to work full time, which is the yellow in this graph, and young men in blue. It occurs in all the transition categories of agri-food systems. And as you can see on this graph, it includes countries of Latin America and the Caribbean. Youth dedicate more than 3 times to work that is not paid and domestic. In 2023, 14% of young men and 26% of young women in Latin America, and the Caribbean, did not study or work, which is almost double for women. Now, there is something about nutrition. Youth is a very key stage for growth that requires more diet, energy, and nutrients. Globally, the food safety insecurity amongst youth increased 16 to 24%. This is growing amongst the young adults. As you can see on this graph, there was an increase in Latin America and Caribbean and 4 points, but the food insecurity is lower amongst the youth. Now, the cost of this healthy diet and the rate of obesity is higher in Latin America and the Caribbean, as you all know. And the diet data shows a deficient diet amongst young youth. Inadequate consumption of diets because youth mostly consume low consumption of fruits and vegetables, high levels of sodas and fast food. And this creates a deficiency in micronutrients that are more common in regions like Latin America and the Caribbean. Also, we analyze the impact of crisis in youth. We notice recession in youth. At the world level, it was reduced in 2% and 7% for young women during the COVID-19 recession, vis-a-vis the 3% for adults. But mostly in this reduction was the employment beyond agricultural exploitation. In Latin America and the Caribbean, youth employment was reduced by 11% given COVID, vis-a-vis 4% between adults, with the highest reductions in activities beyond the farm. We're almost concluding. In terms of public policies, in terms of what we have to do to transform the agri-food systems to include youth, we require policies and programs that point towards a general transformation in combining a more specific focus in the empowerment of youth. So the transformation, it is necessary to broaden the offer of jobs, of decent jobs, through productivity in exports and beyond that. Now, the growth of economies of agri-food systems is the most important step. Invest in modernization, infrastructure, and development of essential values and the offers of formalization of employment. These are basic economic development agri-food systems. And we also require the improvement of food security and young nutrition programs directed to youth, and the strengthening of resilience of youth in social networks and organization. In terms of empowerment and generation of empowerment, we have different interventions, initiatives that will help youth to participate in their capacity of action, the collective action, access training to improve their competencies, a better quality education training based on practical experiences. There are many examples of concrete access and also access to resources. And lastly, the report emphasizes that the importance of additional research is less disaggregated information of young people and youth, or the evaluation of projects and programs directed to youth, in comparison, for example, to disaggregation by sex, or programs directed for women. So there is a great deal to be done as far as research. Secondly, it is important to include youth more consistently in decision-making processes and invest more. Of course, protect the participation of youth in agri-food systems, and observing this as strategy for the future. If we could eliminate youth unemployment and integrate youth between 20 and 24 years of age that don't study or work, you could increase the world GDP by 1.4%. Agri-food systems are the responsible for only 45% of this growth. So in the case of Latin America and the Caribbean, the effects on the GDP would be approximately 1.2%. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias,
Thank you
Benjamin.
very much, Benjamin, for this interesting presentation that you have offered us. It is important technical information, and it really provides us information for discussions in more inclusive of young people and youth in the public policies. Taking this to those that execute public policies is very important for the territories. We value enormously the presence of authorities here that are carrying out concrete efforts to develop and involve youth in agri-food systems. I am delighted to welcome and thank the presence and sharing with us their reflections. We now have the presence of Mr. Sebastián Acosta of the Institute of Agri-Food Systems, that I would like him to provide some opening remarks to begin this segment.
Hola, ahora sí. Bien.
Hi, thank
Muchas
you.
gracias.
Thank you very much. Consider the panel that has been organized here. We would like to thank the presentation by Benjamin and the opportunity to be here as Chile present in this very important milestone for the construction of public policies looking towards the future for rural youth. From the Chilean government, we have taken the challenge with great strength. In the last 3.5 years, we have echoed the need to strengthen rural youth as a state policy to invest new niches. It's not a niche. It is public policies, because there's no rural development without rural insertion. In implementation, we cannot take that path. And from Chile, with this agricultural institute, we have set forth the map, the roadmap in the development of public policies. There are major efforts that have taken place in the last years, hand in hand with FAO, in this process, that in the compendium of this report that transforms, has become a roadmap for us, because what we observe in reality, in the 1.5 million youth that live in rural areas in Chile, and out of that 73%, this is data that we've obtained during the last years, 33% of those rural youth wants to remain in the rural area, participating in any activity that they live in the area they live in. It goes hand in hand with what the report indicated. How are we responding as Chile? It means it's a third. There are 2/3, therefore, if we see it on the other hand, on the other perspective, that prefer other alternatives, and they are also accepting other alternatives, migrating instead of migrating into the urban centers. So how do we ensure that third? And how do we supply as a government initiatives that will provide horizons for that path to be taken and undertaken? We have established, therefore, interministerially, the first national domestic initiative from our president, Daniel Boric, has presented this process is to set the baselines that takes on this report in that which access to land, education, gender, participation, and also social participation, amongst others. There is an aspect that's very important that was set forth in this report. It says 91% of youth manages digital data. And this report, therefore, indicates it's important because digitalization is the language of this new rurality. It is the starting point, how we as a state, as a government, can implement with public policies these very important component because establishes a better education. They also give us the different instances of participation that we have with them. We would also like to mention that we have progressed in the establishment of new public policies with specific aspects, which is called My First Rural Business. And we have the representation of a person here. And what we have done and what we have understood and we have seen reflected is that the amount of education, training with this digital profile is very necessary. There was a structural gap that was mentioned in that which relates to assets. The lack of access to assets by the rural youth. This is a first step to establish $1.3 million in budget in public policies to establish this program, My First Rural Business, with a training process, with digitalization, of course, and helping the youth of our group to go hand in hand with them and bringing into a productive process. We have to take advantage of their skills and also to begin their own startups, their own businesses, because they are the ones that are going to move the field today and the years to come. I would like to mention also that from the government and the Ministry of Agriculture, particularly in DAP, the report that Benjamin delivers is not only a diagnosis, not only it's the data, but it is a roadmap that we need to take for those of us that work with public policies in the rural world. These are the information that we have most updated, and also in Chile, we have begun to take this path. We are convinced that the future of the improvement of rural areas are in the hands of youth. We cannot wait for the future. It is now. And as was said at the beginning, procuring not to leave anyone behind. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Acosta, for sharing your words and your remarks and reflections on how Chile is implementing concrete actions for a rural youth. We will now have the presentation by Vice Minister of the Dominican Republic, Madame Miriam Guzman. She is virtually connected to us. Could you please confirm if you can hear us? Yes, good morning. I can hear you perfectly. Please, the floor is yours. Good morning to all of you. I see friends. Thank you, FAO, for this opportunity of including us as Vice Minister in this important reflection. And thank you, Benjamin, for your very broad report, which depicts a reality that we are observing on a daily basis. The Dominican Republic, in accordance to what we just heard, is not different from this process, although our expectation could be more positive. Every time, although this is very important, and how food safety is of great significance, and knowing that COVID illustrated that families are not in the supermarket, but rather in the rural area and in the production process, it there's still a great deal of youth that want to migrate to the rural area towards the city. We want to make sure we avoid this, and it's a major challenge. And we have to begin by feeding a concept of being proud of what the rural activity means. We have lived for many years with the idea that the rurality seems to be a bad thing. I don't want to live through what I don't want my children to live through all these difficulties and complaints. And if this takes place in the countryside, in the rural area, you increase the immigration to the urban centers, because it does not go in the same line as this other areas in the case of urban centers. My wife, for example, my children do not have the conditions that they should have. My wife wants a washing machine, but she does not have electrical connection. My son likes the field, but he doesn't have connectivity. Therefore, these differences, the lack of services that are available in the rural industry, is is the major challenge that we have to overcome. Agriculture cannot be seen as an activity that is not noble, as has been sold in the market, because connectivity also teaches that the market does give me other opportunities, particularly youth. And I see that these opportunities are not available in the area where I live. The contradictions that take place should be served both at the communication level with a positive pride of working in the rural, that youth wants to continue, young people want to remain and remains with a future, that the conditions of connectivity, assets, and quality of life are also options in rural areas. And these options will take place if we transform agriculture into a modern business, that labor is not a machine to use a machete or other tools. The rustic, that the small machinery that facilitate work, the use of technology in place is a priority and a need in the rural areas. In Dominican Republic, we have begun a process called agribusiness through the pymes, through the small businesses in rural areas. Because to transform mango into juice doesn't have to be in the city. It can be done in rural areas. And this creates formal and safe employment in the rural area. But for this to take place, there has to be public policy, there has to be highways, there has to be neighborhood paths or roads, not only to transport what we produce, but also that they may be means by which this the rural area receives the services. If I have good paths in good conditions to neighbors, I can take a school bus. I can have collectives areas so that the young person doesn't need to go to a university in the urban center. Staying in the field, they can go to university. We are a small country. The current government is making a national effort so that not a single university cannot be beyond 40 kilometers. That implies that you can go to university in 1 hour and not more in good transportation. But for that, there has to be good connection, highways and infrastructure. That is why I'm giving so much importance to what is being achievable, or what is achievable. Is a communication just as good as connectivity, internet, energy, electricity in certain areas where it is produced. We need housing programs where youth understand that staying in the rural areas to live with dignity and to have collective centers for housing, which provides good level production. To stay in rural areas must mean to remain with social services and the training for new agriculture. Sorry, you only have 1 minute to conclude. The training for new agriculture is fundamental, as is the connecting chains of what is produced with the market, to ensure to youth through financing and training that they can be a direct part of public purchases for social programs, both for school, hospitals, and social planning for with food, and that they included as a government policy. I think taking into account these four silos, you could have the possibility that the young person that studies could see the field as a business and agriculture as a means of investment for a good life. And this will give us social peace and ensures continuance in the development, because there is no doubt to work with today's youth for the next years is to finance a future of peace in our Latin American countries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Vice Minister. Thank you, Vice Minister Guzman, for underlining the commitment of your countries with a generation of dignified opportunities for youth.
To close this segment, I would like to give the floor to Colin Phillips of the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, Fishery, Rural Transformation, Industry, and Labor on San Vincent and the Grenadines. Ms. Colin, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Greetings from from the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and also from our people. I come to you this morning in particular on behalf of our Honorable Minister Sabuto Sisa, who is the Minister of Agriculture, Forestry, Fisheries, Rural Transformation, Industry, and Labor. My name is Dr. Colleen Phillips, and I am here in the capacity as the United Nations FSS Food Security and Nutrition Technical Officer. We are grateful for the opportunity to participate in this particular discussion. And
Colleen, sorry for the interruption. We can see you. Can you turn on your camera, please?
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
It's turned on. Sorry. It is on.
No, we can see you.
I'm not quite sure why that is happening. Let me see.
Don't worry. Please go on. Thank you. We are trying to fix it, but you can go on with your intervention, please.
No problem. Thank you so much. All right. All right. So I continue by saying we are pleased for the opportunity to participate in this particular forum. And we start the discussion by saying that in St. Vincent and the Grenadines in 2016, we took up the challenge of zeroing hunger by establishing what is now known as the Zero Hunger Trust. That trust has been very, very involved in ensuring that there is youth participation in agriculture, because we do acknowledge that youths are pivotal for the development of any food system. I would say that over the years, the Zero Hunger Trust has been very pivotal in ensuring that the Sustainable School Feeding Program has been extremely active. And what they do is they allow for the linkage between youth cooperatives and the provision of food to schools for the sustenance of our children. We also have seen an uptake of school gardens within the country. And again, the Zero Hunger Trust have been in the forefront in showing that 22 of our secondary schools, and that's 22 of 29 of our schools, are currently very involved in school gardens. As a matter of fact, we have our top institutions with regards to secondary education are adamant school gardeners, and they provide food not only to the general market, but they also provide food to our institutions such as the hospitals, and again to the school feeding program for secondary schools. Recently, they have embarked upon a youth in agriculture internship program, and what has been happening is that we are now trying to connect the children that are coming out of college to institutions like farms, input warehouses, and any particular entity that is within the agri-food system. We're making that connection so that there is the connection. We are endeavoring upon ensuring that our young people recognize and see agriculture not just as sustenance, but as a viable, lucrative business that is worth their time and their investment. We are also very pleased to announce that we are also now acknowledging, or we have acknowledged, we are acknowledging that youths are, and we recognize that youths are agents of change. And as agents of change, we are linking the UNFS globally. We're linking our local youths to the global UNFS program, along with the World Food Forum program, so that we in St. Vincent and the Grenadines have initiated what we dub as YAN, and YAN is Youth in Agriculture Network. And we've started a local chapter with our WFF chapter, International Youth Chapter, or WFF Youth Chapter, sorry. Now, what is happening? Recognizing that youth are central actors in the transformation of food systems, they bring innovation to the system. They bring energy, they bring fresh perspective to the challenges. And because of that, we recognize that our food system would only be better with bigger involvement, greater involvement of our youth. Of course, we do have our challenges as it pertains to climate resilience, and we are also hoping that we would see an uptake of youth within the system, where we would have innovations as it pertains to smart agriculture, the use of drones, the use of apps, early detection of droughts because of systems that they would set up, and so on and so forth. The whole idea is to bring about an alignment with the UN priorities. Explicitly, we want to emphasize that youth inclusion as a cross-cutting team, we want to have that right across the board. By creating a youth chapter for the WFF, for example, our country is able to demonstrate the global mandate where we try to leave no one behind. There is also the real fact that a lot of the stakeholders within St. Vincent and the Grenadines involved in the food system are currently aging, and as aging entities, we recognize there is need for an intergenerational transmission, and hence the food system transformation requires a long-term sort of thinking and planning. involving youth,
Sorry,
of
Ms.
course,
Phillips, 1 minute to
Yes.
close, please. Thank you.
involving youth, of course, in the whole concept of ensuring that there is continuity. Now, practically, we want to ensure that we would have not only a localized engagement of our youth, but we would have a regional engagement of our youth, and we would have that policy influence. We would have the capacity building that is required for ensuring that agriculture and our food system continues. We would ensure that the policy influence as it pertains to the youth voices can be channeled not only nationally, but we are ensuring that through food plans such as the security plan, our food security plan, which is the Simmons and the Grenland's food security plan, the climate adaptation strategies, the CLAP plan for 2020, our CARICOM 25 by 25 plus 5, which is our regional plan. They would all integrate the priorities, or they would be integrated as our next generation of farmers and business persons within the food system come on stream. We would also ensure resilience and innovation when we bring our youths together, because we would have that digital literacy, that creativity, that adaptability. We would leverage these strengths so that we can accelerate the adaptation process as it pertains to modern practices like vertical agriculture, precision irrigation, and e-commerce for local produce and producers. It is a huge opportunity. We look forward to the entrepreneurship and livelihoods improvement as we link FAO's initiatives and the UNFS initiatives or regional initiatives. Our youths hopefully will be able to access funding and mentorship and training programs to ensure that we have developmental agribusiness startups, etc. And finally, we would have what we call the networking and the visibility that would be brought about by youths nationally reaching out to their regional counterparts and their international counterparts. In other words, what we're basically working on here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines is a leadership cultivation where it provides a training ground for our young people and our young leaders who can later influence the policy making, influence our food, our agri-food system, and so on in terms of agriculture in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We thank you very much for the opportunity again, and over.
Thank you very much, Ms. Colleen. Really thank you for sharing these experiences and actions that are taking place in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Queremos agradecer realmente a la presencia de las autoridades.
To thank the authorities for your time, for sharing your messages and your experience that without a doubt inspire us to continue with our collaborations amongst governments and youth. That is why now we would like to hear the voices of youth, those that are leaders and that work through agri-food systems more efficient and more sustainable. Please, I would like to open the floor today to Gisela Madariaga from Honduras, who represents the Coordination Group for Latin America and the Caribbean for Agri-Food Systems. Gisela Madariaga, Mr. Guerriera for the peoples of Latin America and the Caribbean, and for Tiffany Marcel from Dominica. They will be with us. They will be virtually connected. And please turn on your cameras so we can begin this segment. Tiffany Marcel, Gisela Madariaga. Good morning to each and everyone. I am Gisela Madariaga from Honduras. We are sending you our warmest from the rural youth group and the Latin American, the Caribbean food organizations. In this launch of this presentation, this significant report, it evokes the challenges of youth that are part of this agri-food system in our region. In the framework of the strategic stand of FAO, offers us a shared horizon to go towards a better production, better nutrition, and better life. without leaving anyone behind. This report also reminds us something essential. We cannot raise these four betters without fully understanding and involving the rural youth. As in the findings, we have major persistent access, non-access to education, to technology, and to land, which does not allow us to have an active participation. Notwithstanding that, youth has shown high levels of innovation, leadership, and commitment in being key players in sustainable and resilient food production. Investing in youth rural is not only social justice, but obviously a very important strategy for the future of the planet. We are organized, and we believe this report is a call for action to strengthen these public policies and entrepreneurship programs in the participation, real participation with our voices, which will produce these decisions. We reaffirm our commitment to continue on this path with FAO, with the government, and also with the allies in our region. For us as rural organizations, we want to be recognized not only as beneficiaries, but also as protagonists of the change of agri-food systems. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Gisela, por tu intervención.
Thank you, Gisela, for your intervention. Now we'd like to invite you to listen to Madame Gutierrez from Peru, Kelly Gutierrez from Peru.
Hola, un saludo desde Perú.
Hello, my feedback from Peru and from Latin America and the Caribbean. As a youth, we have sought more than equality in equanimous involvement of youth as indigenous people and farmers. The countryside is our ancestral knowledge. We see it how our daily tasks. We live in the farm. We want to continue upkeeping the farms. And so our struggle and our participation is here for social justice. We want to carry out a fundamental role in sustainability, in the construction of life involvement. It has to be active in production and transformation and the commercialization of these foods, the organizations and processes and community creation. We want to improve. We have a sovereignty in our agri-food systems. This will guarantee our access to production and to land. As youth, we have seen ourselves in many difficulties like migration to large cities or to other countries because we have seen a difficulty here, because we don't have a life in our territories, because whether contamination or other problems. So from this alliance, we're calling to take us into account as youth. We are not only in the future, we want to be incisive in the present to generate change. We want to have an important role. We do not want to be included. We want to have a role. We want to be the major players in this action. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Kelly, por
Thank you very much, Kelly, for your words. And we will continue with Tiffany from Dominica.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity again, FAO. Just before I start, I want to say that it's always a pleasure whenever I'm in the same room with Minister Guzman. She's very passionate about rural people and about rural youth specifically. And I always wish whenever we have these engagements that there's some way that we could see some regional movement so we can learn some things from each other. And it's an honor to meet you as well, Dr. Phillips from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. an island that's just a stone throw away from me. It's really nice to hear about the things that's going on in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and seeing how probably we can engage here in Dominica, some of the youth from St. Vincent and some of the youth from Dominica as well. In terms of the report that was given, I think that there are two statistics that really stand out to me. It's the fact that 44% of working youth are engaged in agri-food systems, while it's only 38% for adults. And in addition to that, the food insecurity amongst youth has risen from 16% to 24% from 2021 to 2023. What these statistics essentially are telling us is that young people are already very involved in feeding and supporting food systems, but many of them are still very vulnerable. From the Caribbean perspective, to me, that means two things, is that youth are very essential to our agricultural future. And that's something that we've echoed today, that it's not necessarily a distant tomorrow, but it's right now. The future it's not far away, it's currently. And then the second thing is that we cannot afford to continue treating young farmers like an afterthought. There needs to be access to land, there needs to be access to finance, there needs to be access to trainings, there needs to be access to markets that must be improved if we want to expect them to lead within these industries. In terms of the Caribbean, we see some of the momentum being reflected when there are young people who are involved in agriculture. We see that now at our Caribbean Week of Agriculture, that young people are being highlighted in meaningful ways. Essentially, we have a Young Farmer of the Year award. Last year, it was a young Dominican farmer named Kevon Vidal. This year, it's a young farmer from Antigua and Barbuda, and his name is Michael Joseph. And their stories show that, regional organizations like ICA and CARICOM are recognizing youth in agricultural leadership and creating visibility for young farmers. For example, ICA in their local divisions are making monetary donations towards the awardees so they can follow up on the agricultural work that they've been doing. In addition to that, the World Food Forum Youth Policy Board, we've actively been doing work to highlight access to finance for young farmers, but also to highlight the work that young farmers are doing. So in the work that we've been doing with young farmers and the agri-food system transformation in a whole, I see that there's clearly a lot of opportunity when young people are given recognition, when young people are given skills and access to resources and a seat at the table. They don't just fill the existing gaps, they bring fresh ideas, they bring different questions, they lead differently. And the FAO report speaks to that, especially with its priority actions to inquire more, to include more, to invest more. In the Caribbean, we translate that into action. We need to have deliberate programs to get youth involved in value chain, land tenure access, credit and finance. We've heard, the amount of young people within our region who don't even have access to a bank account, digital tools, and then policy engagement. So essentially, what I'm trying to say here is that youth matter, agriculture matters, and within our region, within the Caribbean especially, we cannot separate the two. If we want resilient, inclusive, and sustainable food systems, we must put youth at the center of that. The awards and things like that, the spotlights, the stories of the young farmers, they're more than just these ceremonies that we have. It's signals of what's possible for young farmers here in the Caribbean and within our region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kelly, for sharing your thoughts from the Caribbean perspective. Y ahora, para finalizar ya este segmento, quisiera invitar a
Now, to conclude, I would like to invite Benjamin Davis to close this block with some key reflections, if possible, in 1 minute to conclude our last panel. Thank you very much for these presentations. We heard about this message and we struggled against the idea of just centering countries that have high numbers of youth that respond to a very particular challenge, because the issue of youth is a universal challenge, particularly with demographics where there are less youth, as we heard from the 3 countries of medium to low income. This is a different context, and it has another standpoint. I heard similarities between the three presentations of the significance of looking at agriculture as a business, which is something that is profitable, which is very important to bring pride back into the agricultural field. The significance in this time of connectivity as a fundamental dimension to bring it to rurality and training, innovation, and including these generations. But also, I would like to mention the three interventions of the three youth leaders, because it's important to understand that there might be a different energy from the standpoint of this topic. I was in the committee of Task for the Future of United Nations, full of youth. And my only advice was don't fall into the temptation of talking like bureaucrats of United Nations. I believe what I heard, at least, is youth is already highly involved in agri-food systems. They want to be protagonists, but they are vulnerable given the issues that were said. Thank you very much, Benjamin. Thank you very much for your intervention and the closing remarks. I would like to invite Maya and Sebastian to set forth the last panel.
Y ahora para finalizar, continuamos
Now
con
to
este
conclude,
bloque,
we will continue with this block of the two offices of FAO on site. We have the representative of Ecuador and Guyana. We also have Mr. Veduske of Public Policies for Latin America and the Caribbean, who will moderate this last segment and will share the last reflections.
Gracias, Pami. Y para no tomar mucho
Thank
tiempo,
you. And without taking too much time, I would like to thank Jillian and Gerda, because these are offices of FAO that have a great deal of work in this area. This is not in the two countries, but we're going to have some reflections of what's carried out on site in the region. We will have Gerda first, and then Jillian, we will close then for lunch. Thank you very much, Luis, to be able to share the experience of Ecuador. This report mobilizes us it offers us information we can continue and with different alternatives to tackle these issues, but there are three important areas that we have to work in, considering the experience of Ecuador. We have to work with differentiated policies. I believe that Latin America has been fundamental, and we can be particularly centered around youth. We have to work with more data, and we have the opportunity to carry out analysis of the absorption and activity of the agri-food system. And thirdly, financing. Financing is an opportunity, working with guaranteed funds to block, to lift the blocks of this in the area of youth, in the plan of building capacities with youth, not only to improve competencies, but also to improve empowerment of youth in their insertion into cooperatives and private companies. And that is what the Agro Youth Ecuador initiative refers to. It is a FAO with the funds of ICA. It is a public policy today. It is a public policy that already has a presidential law that has interministerial involvement amongst different ministries with the support of FAO to create a state-led employment for youth in the rural area, not only these areas that I've mentioned, but also to help tackle structural issues. Ecuador is a country that is facing aging in its employment people. The average age is 58. Out of the 3 million young, 1 million is employed as workers that only work for the day. These are very precarious jobs, informal jobs, where the cost of opportunity is very high for migration. So we believe that with a good involvement of public policies in the insertion of youth in agriculture area should be the accelerators of the Agenda 2030. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Gerda. Now, Gillian, for her considerations from Guyana.
Very much. And I came with a lot of notes. And after listening to everything that we heard a while ago, I don't know, the notes for me, perhaps I'd like to go with a little bit slightly different way. There isn't a single country in the Caribbean that we work with as FAO that doesn't every single year, every time we talk about priorities, say youth. We need to get youth more involved in agriculture, not just because youth bring a new perspective, not just because there are so many youth that they need new livelihoods or more livelihoods, but also because of the aging populations. So a lot of what was said before in other countries is not different from the Caribbean, but there is this imperative, there is this constant requirement for that. So this report is really welcome, because what this report does is it sets out for us in a very systematic way what are the key issues that are there. And I think many of them we recognize already. There are some new and interesting ones that we didn't recognize, especially when you disaggregate the Caribbean from Latin America, when you disaggregate the women, the young women from the young men. So I think there's something very important there. What this report does for us, I think, is a couple things. One thing is it's an excellent tool for advocacy. Many of our countries will tell us, look, no more studies. We don't want studies, we want action. Well, this helps us to structure real strategic action. This helps us to be able to look at good practices, scaling up some good practices, scaling up and trying to adopt practices from other countries that are working. So I think that's one thing. The second thing that I think the report does for us is it helps us to build better programs, build better policies. We do need more data. I absolutely agree, but I think we have enough data to move to action and more structured and systematic action. There are many, many good examples of things that are happening in the Caribbean and in all over the world, really, and in Latin America as well. Governments, with the support of FAO, and not just FAO, we have to work in partnership. You know, there are great ideas. You know, governments are trying homesteads directly targeting youth, agro parks, and other sorts of agriculture initiatives that mandate that a certain percentage must be for youth. There are lifelong learning opportunities, very good examples, the 4-H Club, and many youth clubs that start children on a lifelong love of agriculture. There's digital initiatives that really try to seek to help stimulate new and modern ways of thinking about agriculture as a business, and doing agriculture in such a way that it is competitive. All of these are things that we are doing. The question now becomes, how do we scale up what's working? How do we identify champions among the people that we do have? And we heard 3 really great champions a while ago. I admire the passion. How do we scale that up, and how do we get those voices out? How do we build what I would call that critical mass that will continue to move the agriculture in the way that I think everyone wants it to go? The thing about youth that is really great is that youth tend to be forward thinking. They're thinking in the future. Many of us, we have more of a past, so we do reflect a lot backwards. Youth tend to think forwards. And I think if we are really going to be able to find the solutions that we need in agriculture and in agri-food systems, we do need to be thinking forward. So that, I think, is where I want to stop. Just one thing, I'm reminded of the story of the young woman in Africa who was, by tradition, she was a goat herder. And when they had programs where they were trying to increase the production of goats, they asked the young woman, what do you want to do? And she said, I don't want to be a goat herder. I want to design bags. And so, listening to what she had to say, they came up with a program where she was able to get different kinds of breeds that produce excellent leather that help her to go to another place in her life, another step that I'm telling you, as agriculturists, we would not have thought of. So my last point is, we do need to find a way to listen. We really do need to listen. Thank you.
Gracias, Gillian, Gerda. Esse cierre, em
Thank
verdade, a
you,
partir
both. We'd like to thank the participants, particularly Benjamin Davis, who accepted the invitation that we set forth by myself and Maya 2 weeks ago in Rome to present the report here in present. I think it's the first region that you are presenting the report on, as we did with the participation of women in agri-food systems. And thank you very much for coming, Ben, and for doing the presentation here. Thank you again also on behalf of Maya and to the entire team that is involved with youth. These are not just words. By definition of member countries and member states, this is strategic. This is one of the topics that mobilizes in a certain way the organization, because we are convinced that this is agent of change, the transformation of agri-food systems. You heard different participants, and I'm thankful for Sebastian Acosta, he is our partner here in Chile, and for Miriam, who always had a great deal of enthusiasm. Thank you, Miriam, and Jacqueline, for the work that is very intense in the Caribbean. And it's not only to listen, and it's important to say, as Gillian was saying at the end, but from the FAO to create mechanisms, so voices of youth are in the decision-making process. As Tiffany was saying, Sela and Kelly, this is part of the commitment that we obtained since the last regional meeting here in the region in Guyana. When we met there, the civil society set forth the need to have more protagonism and decision-making amongst the youth. I can say a great deal by presenting Valentina Morales, who organized this in the office, but I would just like to say 2 or 3 things. The commitment around the agenda for training. There's more than 1,000 young that went through a process of training with us through this agenda. The direct collaboration, that we have Kelly, Tiffany, and Nelda, not only because we identified them, but also because they reflect the work that we have been doing jointly throughout these years in the framing of the HIAFI, of SICA, of the plan of food safety in CELAC, in the CARICOM, with a quite extensive involvement. Aspects, as Gerda was saying, that begins from as a project. It has volume, a scaled volume. As the two colleagues were saying, that we're here for the weeks in Peru, in Paraguay. We carry out this commitment of these in-person meetings and virtual meetings that allow us to hear the voices and active participation on all these processes. So I'm inviting you to close this event, reaffirming our commitment vis-a-vis, as FAO stated, is providing technical support to the governments and all the other allies. We have here some from the World Labor Institution, so that youth is present and builds the future of agri-food systems in the region. Thank you very much to all for being here today.
Bueno, con este interesante panel y
With
conociendo
this
también la
interesting
visión
panel
desde los
and with the
territorios,
vision
como
of all the
noticia
of the
del país,
territory
queremos
and
agradecer a los representantes
areas,
que nos
we would like to
acompañaron,
thank
a
the
los representantes del
representatives,
gobierno por su
the
tiempo,
representatives of
a
the
las y los
government for their
jóvenes
time,
líderes, a los
and for
representantes de
those
la FAO de
leaders
nuestro país,
that are
y a todas las
the
personas que nos
country
acompañaron tanto en Santiago como de
representatives,
manera virtual.
and those that are here
Esperamos que este evento haya
virtually,
contribuido a fortalecer
and those
el
virtually.
compromiso
I hope that
colectivo con
this
la creación de las
strengthened the
juventudes y
collective
la
involvement
transformación
of
de los
youth
sistemas
in the transformation
agroalimentarios,
of
y que los
agri-food
hallazgos
systems,
de este
and
informe
that the
sigan
findings of this
aportando a la
report
concepción de
have
políticas y programas de
continue
alianzas
supporting the
más
creation of
inclusivas,
alliances,
sostenibles
public
en nuestros
policies that are more
territorios.
inclusive
Muchísimas
and
gracias por
sustainable
habernos
in our
acompañado
territory.
y les deseamos
Thank you very
excelente
much
jornada.
for being here, and I
Hasta
hope
la
you
próxima.
have a very nice day.